When I became a diabetic at the age of 5, being my first year of school, it was tough, really hard for Mum. I was very, very sick. I was losing weight. Back then, there was no knowledge. Yeah. There was nothing. You couldn't search on the internet. And to be totally honest, I think I'm lucky to be here.
Tell me about your dad's progression from deciding, you know what, I'm sick and tired of my daughter basically spending all this time in a hospital, to then solving this problem.
My dad, if I cry, you'll know why. It was just what he did for diabetes was remarkable. Yeah. Dad had a little workshop under the house. So he'd come up for dinner, go back down to and Mum and I going, what on earth is he doing? And he didn't say anything. He never spoke about what he was doing until he'd finished it and he knew it was working. Mm-hmm. So he developed and made the world's first home blood glucose tester. And it was purely for me.
That original device that has his handwriting on it. Like, it's so special to have that. It's almost like your dad's still there in that. You know, that device represents what he made and it's got his handwriting on it. It's just like incredible. How have you not burnt out, you know, self-managing diabetes with the technology that you've been using for 50 years now?
I think
my favourite segment, the Dear Diabetes segment.
Dear Diabetes.
My guest today is Lisa Clark. Lisa has been living with type 1 diabetes for over 50 years. If you don't know about the Clark family legacy, you're in for a real treat today. Lisa's father, Stanley Clark, an electronics engineer, invented and hand-built the world's first portable blood glucose meter from a workshop at his home. Initially, he did it to improve his daughter's quality of life, but his invention ended up changing the shape of diabetes self-management worldwide. This is a true Aussie feel-good success story and is well documented in her book, The Sweetest of All Inventions. Be sure to stay around to the end to hear Lisa's handwritten letter to diabetes. This podcast wouldn't be possible without the support of Medtronic. I'm incredibly grateful, not just for their technology, but for the people behind it. Medtronic puts patients first. They truly care, and I feel it. So to my Medtronic family, thank you. Without further delay, here is your daily dose of Lisa Clark. I was just checking my blood sugar. You and I, we've both had a similar start to the day where we've had these unexpected highs, and I'm actually trending up as we speak, despite giving a correction dose. It's just one of those days.
I think stress does mine.
Yeah,
more
for sure.
Than anything, stress.
For sure. What are the stresses at the moment that you're dealing with?
We've just had to put my dear old mum in aged care. And it's ever since I've done that, it's just been, you know, one up, one down, one up, one down. And that's the only thing that's any different. So in
and that
our
you've
life,
had your injuries.
Plus, falling over and snapping my foot off my ankle.
Yeah.
And a compound fracture and another break. So, I've been 18 months now since I did that. Yeah. And, they do say 2 years before it'll be back on track properly. But, that's taken a big, big toll on, well, thankfully sugar levels were great. I was really, really lucky with that. But, yes, you don't stress is my big thing.
Oh, for sure. I mean, diabetes is hard enough without the injuries, then the mental health struggles, and then, like you said, your mum going to a nursing home, all of these things that life sort of throws at us that I guess you don't really see coming can really affect blood glucose management and insulin sensitivity and all of these things that most people don't have to deal with on top of those already hard stresses.
And I remember someone saying to me that milk affects their sugar level. They drink milk, their sugars go through the roof. I drink milk, it doesn't bother that much.
Right.
Like, you know, it's a good level.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's got...
So everyone has something that totally changes what affects them and what doesn't.
Totally.
So,
and I think for me, it's interesting because, you know, I woke up this morning and I did the same workout that I would usually do. I ate the same breakfast at the same time. Like, my routine could not have been any more similar to usual, yet my blood glucose response is completely different. But I had a look at my sleep last night because I wear a Whoop which tracks your sleep quality. And my restorative sleep, so like my REM sleep and my deep sleep, was very, very low. So I had a lot of light sleep. That can make a difference.
It does.
Right? Like if you don't get a good night's sleep, it can really impact the next day, which I think, people who don't live with diabetes would not really know about that.
No, that's
But we get the insight
right.
into our bodies that most people don't.
Well, I've been living with it for 52 years, so it's a long time.
Unbelievable. I mean, your story is amazing. It really is an incredible story.
It is,
hopefully today we can tell your story and give credit to the people involved in the story, which we'll get to. But let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to when you were 5 years old, diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. So what year was that when you were diagnosed?
72.
And where were you living at the time?
We lived on the Northern Beaches, so a place called Wheeler Heights. Mum and Dad came over to England in 1964. Dad, being an electronics engineer, he saw opportunities over here, and my dad's dad was actually asked to be the manager of building the Harbour Bridge. So he worked for a company called Dorman and Long, long time since I've sort of had anything to do with that name. But he was actually asked to bring my grandma and their kids. My dad was not born at that stage. And they said, would you come over to Australia and, build the Harbour Bridge, manage the whole operation? And he actually said no, because my grandma did not want to leave her dad, and she wanted her kids to grow up in England. So they didn't come. So many years later, Mum and Dad met, and Mum didn't want Dad, when he said, we should go to Australia to live, and Mum didn't want to lose the opportunity for Dad to be able to go and do what his dad wanted to do. They moved over here in 1964 and moved to a place, after being here for a while, moved to a place called Wheeler Heights on the Northern Beaches. So that's where I grew up.
And what was life like growing up on the Northern Beaches as like
good friends. When I became a diabetic at the age of 5, school, being my first year of school, it was tough. Really hard for Mum, more so than anyone, because Dad was at work. And it was hard because there wasn't the amount of testing available then. It was all urine testing. It was, very difficult. So poor Mum had sent me to school not knowing what call she was going to get.
Right.
Lisa's either hypo or So it was also a big thing to educate the school.
Yeah. Because you're in the hands of the teachers who probably also don't know much about diabetes, especially back then. It's come such a long way. Now we have tech and all these insights, but back then it would have been.
Back then it was, there was very little known about it.
So how were you actually diagnosed? Like what led you to get the tests done or see the doctor? Were you feeling terrible? Like what was the symptoms?
I was very, very sick. I was losing weight. Now, Dad's parents both died from diabetes.
Right.
So they...
Type 1 or?
Type 1.
Oh, really?
Yeah, type 1. So, they were not well controlled. They were unwell in their later years.
Right.
Which, was probably a good thing, because otherwise my dad wouldn't have been here. But, it was just back then there was no knowledge.
Yeah.
There was nothing that you couldn't search on the internet and find what something was. So it was a matter of, the doctors having to say, this is it. So going back to me first being diagnosed, I just wasn't well at all. And Dad picked up with the symptoms of what his parents had. and what he saw with them. So took me to the doctor, and the particular GP at the time, who's probably not even alive now, I'd say, he said, "Oh, no, what makes you think she's got diabetes?" And Dad said, "Well, what makes you think she hasn't? Like, can you test her? Can you please test?" And, came back diabetes.
And what was the test back then? Like a urine test?
It was actually a glucose tolerance test.
Okay.
So it was, the full...
Similar to what we do today, where you drink the glucose beverage and then you monitor your blood glucose.
So same thing,
Okay, so you get the diagnosis basically at a GP, right? Like at the GP's office?
So there was, I remember it was in DY, a shopping centre in DY, Northern Beaches. It was a pathology, and you'd go and get all your tests done there. And I remember it being up some stairs and had rails, like metal rails on it. And I remember walking up those stairs not knowing what I was in for. And then it was just blood test after blood test, and stay here for 3 hours and we'll do another blood test. And so, not pleasant for a 5-year-old girl for anybody.
Exactly. But you can just see how the trauma from that moment leads you to have these memories and recalls of like the strangest things. Like you can remember the rail. Like I can remember the room I was sitting in. I can remember what the chairs felt like. I can remember what the colour of the room was.
Yeah.
Like you would never really remember those things until you've attached some traumatic experience to it. Yeah. Especially as a 5-year-old, to even remember that is quite amazing. And
the one thing that I do remember, and I will always remember, and to be honest, I've probably still got it in my house somewhere, the nurse that looked after me and took all the blood tests, she made out of, like those like paddle pop sticks. I don't know what you call them. They put them to hold your tongue down and all that. Syringes, not the needles, but syringes. She made me a doll out of all these things that they used.
Right.
And I'll never forget that. And, that was, like I said, it's like 52 years ago.
Right.
So,
so when you got the diagnosis and they said, okay, you have a condition called type 1 diabetes, did they say what they thought caused it, or was it more like, okay, here's the next steps. You need to monitor your blood glucose, or like what was the conversation?
Oh, blood glucose wasn't something they did back then.
Yeah.
So the hospital did, but it was urine testing. Okay. So, had to constantly monitor every single thing I ate. Mum used to have to weigh things. Couldn't eat banana, couldn't eat apple. The only fruit that I could have was watermelon. So today I can't stand it because it's all I ate. Yeah. Had enough of it. But Mum was a really good cook with knowing what I needed, because she, the dietitians had given her the details of what was required. And Mum was perfect mum for a diabetic child, but it was hard. Oh, yeah. It was tough. Hypos, urine testing would say, yes, your sugar level's high, and it wasn't. It was low. It was just so inaccurate. Because there's a delay
between the urine, glucose in the urine. And your blood, they're never going to be perfectly correlated.
No, and your renal threshold. So, some people, sugar level spills into their system higher or lower than someone else. So it was really inaccurate.
Right.
And not suitable.
What was the insulin like back then? So I imagine you were given syringes, and did you do it yourself, or did you have to go to hospital to get it done?
No. Mum had to learn on an orange.
How to inject.
And don't forget, for giving a 5-year-old girl a needle was not pleasant for my mum.
And they weren't the 4 mil that we have today. I'm sure they were like longer needles.
Yeah.
Painful.
It was quite, and they weren't actually use once, throw away. Reusable, and still the stainless steel.
Wow. So you had to sterilise them?
Had to boil them had to boil them. And my uncle was a sheet metal worker. He actually made Mum and Dad this little device that you could put the needles and the glass syringes back then.
Glass?
Yeah. So you'd put them in the container and slide the lid across, which was all like stainless steel, and, boil it. So boil the cooktop or, hot water on the cooktop.
Wow, times have changed. It's incredible.
So times have changed.
It's just how quickly as well.
Yeah.
I feel like every year the technology seems to be evolving pretty rapidly. It's almost like an exponential growth in tech. So back when you were diagnosed, 5 years old, what were some of the social and mental challenges of like living with diabetes as a young kid with your friends? Did they understand it? What was sort of the mental challenges for your parents?
I had my next door neighbour who was my best friend at the time. She was deaf. So we were just perfect for each other. So she would learn how to understand what a hypo was and know what possibly could, like symptoms of a hypo. And if she thought I wasn't quite right, she would actually tell me to go and test my sugar level or urine, urine testing, which back then at the age of 5 was putting a few drops of urine in a test tube and putting a tablet in it, and then depending on what colour that liquid became was what your sugar level was.
So, I mean, even the urine testing technology's changed. Now you've got dipsticks and everything back then was sort of like in its infancy.
It was actually remarkable. And to be totally honest, I think I'm lucky to be here because of that. And I don't think I'm the only one that would say that, even at my age. I've got a girlfriend who I actually met through my mum when she was living at home with us, and we get people coming in to shower her and things like that. And she actually started crying when she came to our house the first time. And I said, "What are you crying about? Like, have I upset you?" And she said, "No," she said, "you're not going to believe this." And she actually could not get her words out. And she said, "What your dad has done for me has saved my life." So, that will hopefully bring a bit more insight as to why I am here to talk to you. And I
mean, let's talk about your father, Stanley Clark.
My dad, if I cry, you'll know why. He was just, what he did for diabetes was remarkable. And I think I was just blessed to have a dad, and not just me, but the multi-millions of diabetics around the world. We were blessed to have a man that could do that out of the goodness of his heart. And that's why he did it for me.
Right. And in a strange twist of fate almost, you getting diabetes was this pivotal moment for your father, who was an electronic mechanical engineer, but was working in TV manufacturing, had nothing to do with medical manufacturing or engineering, nothing to do with diabetes.
No.
His daughter gets diagnosed.
His parents having it.
Right.
He was aware of it. And
then you get diagnosed and he identifies, a problem that needs to be solved, and the problem being you're spending how much time per year in hospital? What was it like?
I'd probably 2 weeks out of every 3 months.
Right. So you're constantly at the hospital getting monitored. What was the reason for being there other than monitoring your levels? Were they administering insulin for you? Why were you there?
Just adjusting insulin. And I mean, as you know, your sugar level can go up, and we can adjust insulin doses, whereas back then you couldn't. So what the doctor told you to have was the dose you had, and you did not sway any way or the other.
Right.
And I think it was basically because at home you could not monitor that.
Right. The technology wasn't there to self-manage like it is today.
Exactly.
So you were required to go into the hospital so that doctors would be able to monitor you and make a plan for your insulin therapy.
And then what would happen? You'd go home after 2 weeks, everything perfect, and then you'd either get sick or you just had a growth spurt or anything.
Right.
You were worried about something. I mean, not that really 5-year-olds worry, but,
Sure.
Just general life.
Yeah.
It just was not the easiest for
Just
mum and dad.
in and out of hospital.
Yeah.
Tough for you, obviously, as a 5-year-old. The last thing a 5-year-old wants to do is be in hospital, intermittently throughout a year. But tough for your parents who now have basically half of their life is spent driving you to and from the hospital and watching their daughter.
Worrying,
right.
I actually had a little dog who would wake mum and dad up in the night if my sugar was playing up.
Oh, wow.
Remarkable.
I mean, they have those today. You can train them.
Yes.
But it's incredible to have it back
Well,
then.
actually, no, you don't need to train them. They know. It's bizarre. That you can train them for, I think it's they're
only a
now
few
using
weeks,
dogs for smelling
They sniff
cancer.
hypos it's incredible.
It's remarkable.
What a companion to have.
That's
So
exactly.
tell me about your dad's progression from deciding, you know what, I'm sick and tired of my daughter basically spending all this time in a hospital to then solving this problem.
I was a patient under Martin Schillink at the Children's Hospital. That was the one at Camperdown. So I'm going back, 50 odd years. And Martin was my diabetic specialist. He had a lady work with him who was the educator, Margaret McGill, who is now at Sydney
McGill.
University.
At RPA Medical Centre.
Yeah.
Diabetes Centre,
Yeah. And Marg was my educator and worked with Martin.
Fantastic.
She was the very first paediatric educator.
Yeah.
Marg was fabulous. Martin as well, and still today I have contact with them, limited, but they did a remarkable job in sending mum and dad home with me with a hospital machine, a hospital glucose tester.
Right.
So Martin was aware that dad and mum were keen to get my levels right and do whatever he could to help. So he said, why don't I send you home with one of these machines and let's see if we can sort out Lisa's sugars.
Mm-hmm. What did the machine look like? How big was it?
It was probably, I don't know, Besser block brick.
Yep.
Besser block brick, is that?
Yeah. It's just a big, sort of heavy, chunky.
Yeah. And anyway, and you could only plug it in. You couldn't do anything else with it. So if you didn't have PowerPoint, you were stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, absolutely remarkable. And it worked. And Dad, being an electronics engineer, thought, you know what, I can make these. So he made one for me. And he went down into his – Dad had a little workshop under the house, and he went down there and it was around about a week or 2 weeks, and he would always whistle when he worked. So he'd come up for dinner, go back down to and Mum and I going, what on earth is he doing? Anyway, didn't think, and he didn't say anything. He never spoke about what he was doing until he'd finished it and he knew it was working. Mm-hmm. And, so he developed and made the world's first home blood glucose tester. And it was purely for me, no one else, just for me. And he went back to Martin Schillink and, because Dad had also worked in radar and, magnets and all that sort of stuff. So he was brilliant with the knowledge that he had.
So he essentially reverse engineered an existing machine that tested blood glucose but had to be plugged into a wall and usually would be at the hospital
could
full
only
time.
Be done in the hospital or the doctor's environment.
Right. So he thought, well, I can solve this problem.
Yes.
I'll reverse engineer it, make one that works, that it's portable. How was it, battery powered, or was it?
Battery and power.
Yeah. Okay. So you could plug it in and you could charge, you could have batteries and take it with you wherever you went.
Take it with you.
So so you think it was just only a couple of weeks of spending, multiple hours a day, obviously, in his little cave under the house and creating this machine?
Where it began.
So what was it like the first time he said, okay, this is what I've been working on for the last few weeks. Let's test it out. Do you remember that day?
Oh, yeah.
What was that like?
I do. He came up from from his little workshop, and he just said it works. And we said, what works? Like Mum and I going, what works? You've been whistling your head off for, what works? And we had no idea. By this stage, I was 12.
Right.
So we'd been like 7 years of
right.
the old system of urine testing. And anyway, so and he checked it against the strips that we had. He designed his machine to use those strips.
Okay.
But his big concern initially was, have I done this and it's accurate?
Right.
Because, you could have 10 millimoles on one machine and 15 millimoles on another machine.
Right.
So the accuracy was the most important part.
So was he calibrating the accuracy of the device that he made with the hospital's machine and checking if they were similar?
Yes.
And how accurate was it?
It came in at 99.7, I think.
Yeah, absolutely amazing.
So and a lot of the work was done at the Garvan Institute in St Vincent's Hospital.
Yeah.
So a lot of the accuracy was checked there.
Right. So they cross-checked his device.
Yes, yeah,
Right.
because they needed to make sure with the labs, like they had to make not just that machine, but with the actual labs,
like the pathology labs that would test blood. They could use. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was huge. It was, and
That's
it
incredible.
literally went nuts overnight.
Of course.
Because Mum, Dad, and myself off to the Children's Hospital. And we saw Martin and Marg McGill, and they're going, what? Like,
how did you do this? We didn't expect it.
Oh.
So they gave him the machine initially so that you would have a more convenient way of doing it at home. They didn't expect him to be working like a mad scientist under the house to figure out how to make his own.
No, they just thought we were going to go back and they'd say, oh, yeah, this is good, great.
Yeah.
Now we'll have to give it back. Because they were like, a lot of money.
Yeah.
They were not cheap.
Yes.
But
when he came upstairs and said, okay, it works, and you're like, what works? How did he prick your finger? Like, what was the instrument that was used?
Because we had it.
Was it Lancets like today?
Yeah,
or okay.
Yeah. It was actually the Lancets that they used, not the finger pricker one,
right?
But it was a little steel. It was like a piece of foil,
right?
Very, very small.
Okay,
but it had a nasty little pricker on the end of it, and
quite
they
painful.
hurt.
Yeah.
They hurt.
So he pricks your finger, and you put the blood sample
onto a strip,
which is inserted into the machine, and then what comes up on this machine? Because I have seen this. I went to Diabetes New South Wales head office many years ago, and I saw they have got like a beautiful history of how the technology's changed, and I've seen a few.
Yeah.
None of them are digital. They're sort of like these analog.
Yes.
They've got like a dial.
Yep.
So what is it showing you and telling you? Is it giving you a number? Is it saying in range, out of range?
Gives you a number. So the low range, I can't remember the lowest amount that it had, but the low range, the best was the middle range, and it was like on a metre, so right in the middle between 5 and 10.
Right.
And then high range was up the other end of the scale.
Right.
And Dad was a meter man. He wasn't a digital man because he didn't trust 100% fail-safe technology at that point. Because we're going back. I mean, look, I think today there's still issues with technology, but he was.
So he
really
liked the idea of having like a meter that gives you a clear reading.
Because it was a known outcome.
Right. And how long did it take between taking the blood sample and getting the reading? Was it like minutes or a few seconds?
It was a minute.
So 1 minute. So the machine computes.
No. So what the minute was the blood soaking into the strip.
Okay.
So the strips back then were nothing like they are today. And it was like a piece of litmus paper. And it would actually, so you put the blood on the litmus paper and it had what they called a semi-impervious membrane on it. So the glucose would absorb into this strip and the strip would then react with the glucose would react with whatever was in this strip.
Gotcha. Okay.
So then there were actually 2 different companies that made them, one American and one German, and they were the ones that made the strip. And the strip was the thing that actually was the consumable product because you use volumes. 5 a day, 10 a day, whatever. So Dad made his machine to take either of those 2 strips.
Right.
Because that's what the hospitals were using.
Right.
So people weren't, hospitals were.
Gotcha.
So he thought, well, I haven't got a strip, so I need to use strips. So I've got to make these machines to take either of these 2 strips.
And that way he'll be able to essentially help more people because it's compatible with more strips.
Yeah.
Most hospitals using those 2 strips, so
that's
he can reach out more.
Some hospitals use one brand, other hospitals used a different brand.
But his was agnostic. It works.
So you chose when you ordered.
Right.
So if you wanted to use the wipe-off blood system or the wash-off blood system, you picked which one you wanted.
So after that first day where you do a test at home, what were the next steps? Because I know that he's obviously helped a lot of people, obviously, with the development of this technology, but he started to manufacture these from home and give them to individuals from the hospital.
So what happened was after taking my machine, and I've still got it at home.
The original?
Yeah, the original. Amazing. Still got it. No one's going to get that out of my, that's mine. I think I'll take it to my grave with me because, it's just priceless.
Oh, yeah.
And Dad wrote on the lid, Lisa's save. First machine, Lisa's save. Yeah. So Dad's handwriting.
Amazing.
And he was a really amazing man with what knowledge he had, and he used it purely to help me. But after that first little machine went back to the Children's Hospital, and Dad said to Martin and Marg McGill, I've made a machine. And Martin said, well, we'll do the tests on it. We'll see how, remarkable. Let's do some testing, make sure it's accurate, this, that and the other. And then they immediately ordered 30 machines for the diabetics that had brittle control.
Right.
Which mine was one of them.
Right.
And then it literally went from there. It just went crazy.
Everyone wanted one.
Everyone wanted them. The TV stations were on it, the newspapers, Woman's Weekly, New Idea, people from overseas, politicians. They were actually getting their staff to fly over and pick a machine up from Dad.
Incredible.
It was remarkable.
And these were all homemade?
Went worldwide. All homemade in our kitchen.
So the first 30 machines that go out to people living with diabetes were made by your dad at his home.
Yep.
At what point
was he
thinking?
With the help of Mum.
Right, with the help of Mum, of course.
Yeah, and me
and
to
you.
A point.
Yeah.
It
was a family business.
Family business,
At what point does your dad and your family decide should we look at commercial opportunities? Should we manufacture at scale? Like, was that a path that you end up going down?
Yeah, we had no choice.
Right, because the demand was so
The demand was huge, absolutely huge. And then it got to the point where Mum and Dad, because I was at school at that stage, Mum and Dad were that busy that they ended up saying we can only give a machine to children and pregnant women, because Dad got a phone call from a lady and she cried and Dad's going, what's wrong? What's going wrong? What's happened? And she said, my daughter's lost three babies during pregnancy. She can't do this anymore. She wants a baby. Anyway, short time after that, got a machine off to her very quickly. And then I think it was about, 12 months later, these two women walk into the factory with a baby in a pram, and it was them coming from, I think they lived in Wagga. Wow. And they actually drove to
thank your dad personally.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Tears in my eyes seeing, but some of the stories were remarkable. Wow. He also had a lady approach him. It's bringing back a lot of memories too, so which are beautiful memories but heartbreaking as well for me because I miss him. But he had a lady say, look, I can't do sugar level tests with the machine. And he said, why? Are my instructions not clear enough? And she said, no, I'm blind. So within 4 or 5 days, he'd made a machine to play music. So she could find out what her sugar levels were based on what the music was. Wow. So if it was low, it would be a very deep voice. If it was in the middle, it was like a average voice. Yeah. And if it was high, it'd be a really high-pitched voice.
Unbelievable.
Or music. It was, just unbelievable.
It's just so innovative and brilliant.
Yeah.
Like to even think of a way to make that machine play music is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely astonishing. I read a stat. I think I was in doing my research for the show, I found this statistic that the amount of hospital days that were reduced by this portable device was something like, in a year, across those 30 children that received the machine, 300 they would be in the hospital for a combined amount of 360 days, so almost every day of the year, which means pressure on the hospital system, the doctors. That number was reduced to 54 total days in a year spent in hospital across those 30 children.
It was huge.
I mean, what a gift.
And that was one hospital.
Right.
So you can imagine worldwide what it did was I still shake my head today. And I think the thing that gets me today is that the average newly diagnosed diabetic has no concept of where that machine first started. They think it was a big multinational company. They've always been around. And you know what, Drew? They haven't.
No.
And it was my dad that did it.
Right.
And
from his house.
In my mum's oven. So he needed to make cases to hold all the equipment within, like to make the machine. So he made out of a beer keg. Now, my dad never drank alcohol. He never touched a drop. He actually made a vacuum former out of a beer keg to vacuum form the cases, the Perspex cases, and he used to melt the plastic in Mum's oven. Wow. Now, they made that many of them in the early stages, and this was when they were just working from home, that they Dad blew Mum's oven up.
For a worthy cause.
For a worthy cause.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
yeah. Anyway.
So when you went from the homemade devices to the factory, Were there staff that were hired? How many people were working there? Was it? I'm just picturing this like Willy Wonka factory of just devices being mass produced. What was it really like?
So the very first shop was, or we called it a shop because it had a front entrance and a little area where you could walk in and look at the machines and what have you. So it was actually down in DY because that was close to where we lived, and it was behind a fish shop. So it wasn't the best place to work in summer because of the smell of the fish. But the amount of machines that Dad was able to make in that little factory, and he actually, they allowed him because he needed certain rooms for certain things and, putting electronics together and things like that. He needed certain lighting and what have you. And the actual owner of the factory said, you do what you need to do. Remarkable invention. Not that Dad invented glucose testing.
Sure.
He invented the home glucose testing.
Portable, battery-powered.
Yes.
Take it with you.
Yeah.
And
Dad never claimed to have the ownership of glucose testing.
Sure.
He was a really humble man.
Right.
And I think even today, looking back, I don't know whether he was proud of what he did, but everyone else was.
So you don't think that he self-acknowledged how amazing it was?
He did get a lot of flack from different things over the years, mainly the multinational companies, which, that's business, and they probably thought, well, why didn't we do this? And, I think he did have a few struggles. He had one particular doctor ring him. He was a GP. He came from Melbourne. And he rang Dad and he said, you've put my patient in hospital. And Dad said, I'm sorry, why? What's happened? So you can imagine my poor Dad's heart just stopped. And he said, the sugars haven't been right and it's not going on, the 3 monthly test. It's all out of whack and it's not showing. Anyway, so you've put my patient in hospital. And Dad said, sorry, he said, can I just run through with you what you're actually doing? Because he was in Melbourne. It wasn't like Dad could just drop everything and go down to Melbourne. And airfares back then were through the roof, so it wasn't something you'd just do. And, he works out. Dad found out after trying to solve the problem of what was causing it and what had happened. And it was actually the fact that the doctor had been prescribing urine strips.
Wrong strip.
Not glucose strips.
Wow.
So, a few different things like that. Thankfully, there wasn't an awful lot of that that went on. And I think as time went on, people were more educated. So, the professionals, the doctors, because it was all new for them as well. It was huge. It was. I still shake my head thinking, I can't believe we were
How many
part
people
of that.
How many devices do you think were produced?
Oh.
Would you know? Is there a number?
You know what? In our shed at home, we've kept everything.
Yeah.
There's probably a book in there with the numbers in it.
Really?
But it's finding it.
Yes.
Because we've got a lot of paperwork.
But are we talking thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds, like millions?
Hundreds of thousands.
Really?
Oh, no, it's probably even millions.
Wow.
When I look back.
Yeah. So how many years was he producing it in the factory?
He changed factories a few times because the factories got smaller. Or no, the factories didn't get smaller.
Yeah, the business grew.
The business grew. And the amount that we needed to produce increased very rapidly.
Right.
So we probably went through 4, 5 factories. In the end, Dad built a factory, purpose-built it, and that was absolutely amazing. He then found, as time went on, that he found out that there was 22, and I'm going back to like the very early 80s, $22 million a year was going out of the country on the test strips, the consumable product. Yeah. And Dad thought, hang on, that's money going out of the country. You know, although he was English, he was proud to be an Australian.
Sure.
And he thought, no, I can make these. His best mate was a biochemist. So they got together. They also had some people they knew. I don't know whether they sourced them or whether they knew them, because I am going back a few years again. But they actually made a machine to actually make these test strips. So Dad once again went back to the drawing board and came up with an Australian blood glucose strip. And that blood glucose strip was unbelievable. Like, you know, that sort of money to be held in the country rather than going overseas.
Sure.
So, yeah, I was going around my job as part of, you know, just mum, dad and me or myself, that bad grammar. We ran the whole everything of the business. So I'd go around to all the hospitals, the education centres, the chemists. I'd set up all the agents, whether it be Brisbane, you know. I drive here, there and everywhere and loved it.
How old were you at this point?
17.
Wow. It's quite young to be.
I just got my licence.
In a sales role.
Yeah. I left school in year 10, did a secretarial course. That was the best thing I ever did. And then went to work for an accountant. And so by this stage, 17, thereabouts. Right. And Dad said, I need help. He said, I can't do this myself. He said, I can't be going here, there and everywhere, meeting people, manufacturing. Mum was in the office full time. She didn't have the time to do it because she'd pack the machines, send them, take them to the post office, ring the courier, whatever we did. So Dad said, I need your help. Right. I really need you to come and work with us.
And you're the perfect face for the business because...
And I was the face of the business.
It was built around you, because of you.
Yep.
You know, what a perfect way to get the word out through the individual that it all started with.
So,
So you were going to hospitals, pharmacies, and what was your role to try to educate them about this new device, encourage them to give it to their patients?
Yeah, help them understand, you know, what strips went with what machine and different things, show them the types of machines they could get, and then I'd set up the agency, so I'd go in and train all the staff. And what I also did with a lot of the hospitals, I'd do shifts. So I'd go in at midnight and teach the night staff how to use the testers. And then, you know, go 2 p.m. So change over. And I did that over
That's
the
actually
years.
an amazing utility now that I think about it, to have portable glucose machines in hospitals that you can walk from bed to bed rather than have to take the patient to the machine that's plugged into a wall.
Yeah.
Like there's so many great utilities that come out of it.
Yeah, it was huge.
Yeah.
You could do your glucose test in your car.
Yeah. Like we do today.
It was great. Yeah.
But 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. What was the price of a machine like that back then?
$99.
$99, and how long would that last?
Until you dropped it.
Till the wheels fell off.
Till you dropped it.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
So
I can honestly say I haven't got my transformer, like the power supply for mine, but I reckon if I plugged mine in, it'd still work.
I would love to challenge you to do that.
Yeah, I just
video
don't
it for
know
me.
how I can find it.
If you can figure out a way, that would be amazing. We'll plug it into this podcast episode.
We have got an 84 square metre shed that is full of everything to do with the manufacturing of the testers.
Amazing.
So I'm sure in there
There's a way.
somewhere.
Yes.
So might take
Might
few
take some
years
time.
to clear, but, if I find one,
That would be
I'll
so
try.
cool. So they'd sell for about $100, and the test strips were, how much would it cost for like
I can't remember at the time, but Dad actually created it so that the strips and the needles, syringes, by this time they had become plastic, throw away, use once, throw away. So Dad actually created it so people could get that through the health system.
Okay.
Because he said people can't afford it. Right. And the thing is, living with a diabetic child, a lot of second parent, like mums generally, couldn't work because they had to look after their child who was sick. So Dad said people can't afford this condition. The insulin was through the roof. The test strips through the roof. The urine testing tablets through the roof. So
diabetes is expensive.
Yeah.
Because it's so full time.
Yeah.
You're self-managing and micromanaging all day long.
Yeah.
I mean, even to this day, it's still expensive.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, our government helps us out a lot.
Better.
It's a lot better. But
a lot better.
If you're not on the subsidies, it's a lot of money. Like even just before CGMs became available on subsidy, it was a few $1,000s a year.
Yeah.
You know, it's an expensive condition. Did your father have like iteration 1, 2, 3 versions that would change over the years, and would it get smaller and faster? How many versions did he end up creating?
Probably about 15.
Wow.
Incredible. So, he did realise as time went on that what he did, because he used batteries as well as the power, the batteries that the first one took were C-size, so they were big. You needed, I think it was about 5 of them. So the thing was the size of a brick. And it was literally the size of a brick. Like, if you held it up today, you go, oh, yeah, I know what you mean about it being a brick.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that heavy.
Yeah.
It wasn't that light with all those batteries in it.
Yeah.
But
there's some good photos on the internet. I did a bit of a Google search, and there's some great photos of you holding that original device that has his handwriting on it. Like it's so special to have that. It's almost like your dad's still there in that. You know, that device represents what he made, and it's got his handwriting on it. It's just like incredible.
It's a story that like I said, I still shake my head, and I can't believe that Mum, Dad and I went through that as a family, because families, their kids go off, do their own jobs and, things like that. Yeah, you're a close family, but what we went through was absolutely remarkable. It was just, I can't believe it. I shake my head thinking to myself, I am gobsmacked that if I wasn't born with the possibility of having diabetes and then getting diabetes, and I wasn't born to a mum who was brilliant with office work, anything, she was capable of anything as well, and a dad who was as brilliant as what he was, it wouldn't have happened. It might have happened, and it probably would have, but just for a small family of 3 to be part of that together it's just beautiful.
Such a strong legacy.
Yeah.
And as you say, it's so many like sliding doors that lead to somebody creating that device. There are so many like, what if this didn't happen? What if but it all did happen in that amazing way.
Yeah.
And your dad was awarded an Australian, what do you call it? OAM.
Yeah.
Order of Australia
Award,
medal. So basically recognised for tremendous service and value that he, offered to the community and essentially went worldwide. If you think about,
he went worldwide. It was just amazing.
Yeah, and to be recognised to that level, what do you think that meant to him and to your family?
The sad thing was when Dad was awarded that medal, he was in the very, very early stages of Alzheimer's. And it was heartbreaking. He was totally aware of it, and he was still working, but not on the glucose testers at that stage because that had all finished. But, yeah, I think that was probably because he was so proud to be an Australian, although he was English, but he loved this country. He loved what it offered. He loved it. And he was proud to say, hey, I've done this as an Australian invention.
Yeah.
And that is just, priceless.
Priceless.
So it was worth it for him.
Yeah.
And, over the years he had the different models, the batteries got smaller. He then realised he needed to do digital. He did the ones with lights, so coloured lights for children who were blind or bad eyesight.
Right, couldn't see the exact reading on a dial.
Yeah. So he did one with colours for those people. He then had the music.
Brilliant.
That, and they just got smaller and smaller. He then put a printer on one of them so you could print out your levels.
So you had the sort of receipt that told you.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he did all that, and
Amazing
he was
work.
just absolutely remarkable.
So what happened? Was there a moment where like the multinationals sort of knocked on the door and said, hey, we'd like to buy the business?
So, no, that would have been nice, but no. Dad was actually approached by an entrepreneur when he very first started the testers, and however this guy had heard of it, I don't know, probably the media, because it was everywhere. Like I said, newspapers, TV, magazines. And he rang Dad and he said, I'll pick you up. I'd like to take you for lunch or dinner, I can't remember. And he said, I'll have a car pick you up. So Rolls Royce turns up in the street, like one of those Silver Shadow. Yeah. Anyway, turns up, picks him up, and Mum's like got dollar signs in her eyes while she's at home with me looking after me. Dad takes off. He comes home in a taxi. And Mum's going, what on earth? Like she's at home twiddling her thumbs, biting her fingernails,
Waiting for the good news, yeah.
What's happened? And, he turns up in a taxi. And Mum said, what happened? And Dad said, we all got to sit around this big dining table. They gave us all this flash food. It was like 6-star, beautiful, and which Mum and Dad were never used to that. And the guy had said to him, this entrepreneur had said, you've got to remember one thing, Stan, I'm the boss. And Dad got up and he said, you're not my boss, and caught a taxi home. So Dad knew that man would have taken it and put the prices up. They might have been a little bit more, beautifully made and not beautifully, that's not the right word.
I know what you mean.
A little bit more better looking.
Right.
And a bit more technical looking or something.
Yes.
But Dad said, no, this man is a businessman. He's going to take it and do it to make a lot of money out of it. And Dad didn't want that. So, he said, no, you're not doing it. So he continued. Then he made the strips. And by this stage I was working with Mum and Dad. And we got the government contract for the strips, Australian strips, which would have meant a lot of money staying in the country. And within an hour of me letting one educator know, and no one needs to know where it was, I let the educator know, and within 1 hour I had not a CB, UHF radio that Dad had put in the car for me then, because there were no mobile phones back then. So I contacted Dad. I said, I've just been, let the news out. And I got back to the office within about an hour and a half, and Dad had received a call from one of the manufacturing, the big manufacturers.
Like an overseas competitor.
Overseas, yeah. And they said, Stan, if you release that strip, you'll be out of business in 6 months. And Dad thought, well, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And he did it, and we were out of business in 6 months.
So they essentially began their own manufacturing with similar technology?
Well, they already had their own strips,
but they didn't have the device.
But they didn't have the device.
So they began manufacturing essentially the device that your dad figured out how to make.
Yeah, and then they
had the resources to make it at scale. Wow.
Yeah, and that's business. But I remember as Dad was getting more and more affected by the Alzheimer's, and he used to cry and he'd say, they took it away from me. And I said, you know what, Dad? No one can take that away from you. What you did out of the goodness of your heart for me. And you totally revolutionised diabetes control. And he did. No one can ever argue that with me. Because it was Dad that did it with the help of Martin Schilling and Margaret McGill. And, they were fabulous. There were a lot of people, Sydney hospitals, Taree Hospital, educators, everyone was so, so good. And I remember Diabetes Australia, it was then called the Diabetic Association, and their office was in Pitt Street, Sydney. And there were about 10 people that worked there at the time. Now look at them.
Yeah.
So that shows you the numbers of people that Dad with the glucose testers had to help.
Right.
And he did.
Yeah.
And
there's something so pure about his legacy in that he did walk away from a potential massive payout, but he didn't want to be in sort of golden handcuffs and feel like he wasn't doing the thing that he set out to do with the purpose of helping people to trade that off for, financial incentive.
Yeah.
There's something about that almost makes it more beautiful, that he was willing to walk away from it. And his legacy still remains, as you say, the history books are written.
Yep.
He did what he did.
Yep.
The multinationals were probably always going to, at some point, get involved and take over. It just, the fact that he was the first one out of the gates.
And the remarkable thing out of all that was Dad, one of his friends that he worked with many years ago in a place called Hanamex down in Brookvale, and they did photographic equipment and things like that. And he met a man there that I'm pretty sure he met Bob there, or whether he'd known him for a while. But when he'd have a lot of contact with Dad after the glucose tests had sort of stopped. And, Mum had to get a job. Dad was looking for a job. And this man, Bob, that he'd met or known at Hanamex years before, he said, Stan, there's a job going where I work. And he said, you'd be perfect for it. Anyway, so it was ResCare at the time. It's now ResMed, and they do the sleep apnea machines.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Still functioning today?
Wow.
Wow.
ResMed, they're big company.
Wow.
Anything to do with sleep apnea, they lead it. They are. And Dad was part of that very first group of people that worked for ResMed. Or ResCare at the time. And their managing director just loved Dad because of what he was capable of. He actually designed, he was in R&D, research and development, and he designed a face mask for babies because they didn't have face masks for babies. They only had big face masks.
Right.
So he actually developed this face mask. That was one of many things that he did.
Yeah. But even that, even that would be a tremendous legacy to be, inventing
Huge.
these devices that are literally keeping people alive or improving their quality of life.
Yeah.
To have done it in the diabetes realm, in the apnea space, just amazing achievements. Yeah.
And Dad then, because Mum actually took over my job. I worked for a doctor as a receptionist. Loved it. I think it's one of the best jobs I've ever had. I loved it.
Yeah.
And Mum took over my job when I left to have my first baby, and 32 now.
It's a big baby.
Yeah, old big baby now. And Mum worked there, but she wasn't happy. She didn't like it. And so, she ended up with a job at ResMed with Dad.
Oh, okay.
And Mum was in accounts payable. So, and today she still has contact with a lot of the people that were original workers there, and they've all retired now. But, they came to see her at the care place the other day, and one of the ladies said, "Oh, we just loved you because you paid us."
Yeah, she was the most important person in their world. Yeah.
So,
great.
but we still have contact with the ResMed people today. They enabled me, they gave me permission to write about their story with them, which we'll talk about.
Definitely, yeah.
So.
Wow, it's amazing. I think what your dad did was tremendous, and to know that you can still tell the story today, and you've written a book, and we can talk about it on podcast. It's such a nice thing to do for your dad. I'm sure he would be so proud to hear all of this.
I had to do it.
Totally.
So many people would, and to be honest, Drew, I really think what a movie it would make.
Yeah,
because it's huge. And how many diabetics are there in the world?
Right,
an awful lot. And it changes all the time. Every day there's more and more. So
it's a great Aussie success story. It's
huge.
Yeah.
And it is an Australian story.
Well, maybe when this episode goes out, if any producers out there are listening and want to get in touch, we'll give you Lisa's details.
Yeah, definitely. I'm happy to speak with that. And my big thing, it's not, it's all about money. We make big money. And it's not what it is. It's purely my dad's story of a humble, just a dad with a sick diabetic child at the time. He did that just for me.
Right.
And that story needs to be really told.
Yeah. And it feels like your dad was too humble to tell the story himself, and
he wasn't
going to do it. So it's in your hands essentially to get the word out.
And my thing was, because I'm an only child, once I've gone, although my kids and my husband and our little puppy dog know the story, they don't know it like I do.
Right. Yeah.
And once I'm dead, it happens to all of us. I don't know whether it's 10 years' time, 5 years' time, 30 years' time. I'll be pushing it then. The story's gone once I'm gone. So that is why I wrote my book.
Oh, I love it. It's got all the good feels, and you've done amazing stuff. So let's talk a little bit about life with diabetes. I mean, you've been living with diabetes for how long now?
Nearly 53 years.
So 53 years, a true veteran. You've seen it all.
Yeah.
How would you sort of summarize your life with diabetes? I mean, I know it's very hard to do in a simple conversation, but
I think I'm blessed for the fact that I got it when I was young.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel for people that get it in their teens, when they're pregnant. Because I didn't really know any other life.
Mm-hmm.
I was 5 years old. I'd go to birthday parties, eat what I wanted at birthday parties. But that first 5 years, Mum she always cooked well. We always ate well, good balanced meals. So that wasn't a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just the fact that I've always eaten like that. I don't know it any other way.
Yep.
Whereas I think if I got it when I was in my teen years, and then also, with puberty and things like that, throws your sugar levels out of total whack.
Yeah. That's been a very common theme with all the guests that I've spoken to on this podcast series, where everyone's got it at different ages. I was 22. There's the people who got it when they were 15, 5. Yeah. There's no good time to get it, but I do know what you mean in that if you don't know anything else, like your memory before 5, you've got 4 years, if you're lucky, to remember very little.
Yeah.
So your whole life has been diabetes.
And not just that, it's my everyday, and it has been for a long, long time.
Yeah.
My whole life virtually.
Right. You worked in the space, you managed your diabetes, it was in your family history, like it's just always been there.
Yeah.
What kind of tech have you used over the years? How has that changed?
I still use my glucose, not the one that Dad made.
I was going to say, wow.
Dad actually had a lot to do with the production of the newer, or not the newer ones, but the newer compared to what Dad's machines were. So I still use my little Contour.
So you've probably done
tester.
Let's try calculate how many finger pricks you've done over the last 52 years.
God.
I'm interested.
So I average probably about 8 a day.
Okay, let's round it up to 10 to make it nice and easy.
All right.
10 a day,
and
70 a week.
Since 12, because it was 12 when the machines
So let's say it was 40 years. Let's say over the last 40 years.
Yeah.
70 a week.
It's probably more than that. Yeah. Okay.
Let's get a calculator out. This is, I don't know how your fingers are still attached to your body right now.
Because I use different fingers and they're fine. Like
70 finger pricks per week. So that's, hold on a second. Let's work this out. So 10 a day, 70 per week, 52 weeks in a year.
I'm curious.
I know. So 3,640 finger pricks per year. So
times 40 years.
Yeah, over 50 years, it's 182,000.
Well, they haven't fallen off.
Yeah, they look good to me. So you still use finger pricks.
Yes.
Is there a reason you haven't used a CGM?
Yes, because I don't trust the technology.
Really?
Yes. I'm old hat. It works and I don't want to change it.
Okay.
So funny story. It's not funny story. When I broke my leg, that was horrific. But I'm in hospital and, all the endocrine team come in and they say, you don't use your phone for your tests. And I went, no. Mm. And they said, why? And I said, because this works. And they said, oh, okay. Mm. And yes, there are issues with it and I'm aware of them. So not everyone, but things do go wrong.
Sure.
But I trust what I use.
Okay. No,
and it works.
And a huge part of diabetes management is psychology. It's your relationship with the devices, with the condition.
Yeah.
If you don't feel confident and comfortable, you probably won't be as happy. You probably won't feel as, much comfort around your management. So I understand.
And I don't mind doing 10 tests a day.
Right, and you don't mind it. And how's your control been? Are you happy with it?
Good. With Mum going into care, I've had a lot of stress.
Right.
A lot of stress.
Sure. But over the sort of majority of those 40, 50 years.
I've got no complications.
So your eyes are good.
Other than I'm a total mental case, but that, no problems, no nerve damage,
Okay.
HbA1c is perfect, although this next one might be a little bit out of whack but they usually sit around the 6 mark. So I'm happy.
That's really good.
I'm really happy.
And what sort of insulin are you using? You're obviously injections.
Just vials.
Oh, you're still on the vials with syringe?
I still do the vials with the syringe.
You know what? You've stuck to the old school ways and it's working. Yeah, that's okay.
And, I just find what has worked for me has always worked for me.
Sure.
Why change it?
No, I feel you. I was slow to get a CGM as well. I did 10 years on finger pricks and then the last 2 to 3 I've had a CGM.
Yeah.
I'm still on multiple daily injections and people often ask me why I don't use a pump and it's the same reasons. My control's really good. Yeah. I'm happy. It's working. I will say though that when I sort of had to dive into the evidence around clinical outcomes, there's really strong evidence for these new technologies improving a number of clinical outcomes. But if you're not facing complications, then you may not even get the full benefit of this tech. So if you're avoiding these long-term complications with your current management,
that's it.
Then tick, you've done a great job.
If it's not broken,
but for people listening, if they are using older tech and they're having a hard time managing their blood glucose, managing their insulin, HbA1c, time in range, the new technology, just by switching over, you don't even have to change any other lifestyle factors. It will improve your HbA1c on average, improve your time in range, those kinds of things. So there are huge upsides to the tech, but it comes down to the individual. And
it also comes down to things like, have you had good sleep?
Yeah, well, let's talk about some of the lifestyle things. This is great. So over the years, what have you found have been, some of the golden sort of nuggets around lifestyle tips and tricks that you can share with people that you found has worked for you?
A good night's sleep, definitely.
Huge.
That helps.
And there's a strong research looking at that.
Yep. Heat. Heat affects me.
Yep.
Drops my sugar level. Whereas a lot of other people, it raises their sugar level.
Right.
So, things like that. Stress is huge. That's one of the biggest things. If I'm not stressed, sugar levels, they barely alter. But I have also, over the years, constantly checked sugar levels and adjusted insulin ever so slightly, depending on what, time of day. It might mean, drink more water.
Sure.
Whole heap of different things like that.
How have you not burnt out, self-managing diabetes with the technology that you've been using for 50 years now? How are you sitting here today just sort of...
Because it's my life.
Do you ever feel like that there's been like a burden that you've been carrying weight on your shoulders, or you just feel cruise control?
Yeah, I don't. No. And in saying that, or in asking me that question, I think a lot of people, the more you stress about your sugar levels, the worse they become. So because I have been stressing the last couple of weeks, because of Mum initially, we've got other issues of do we stay, because we actually had 2 houses on the one block. When Dad got Alzheimer's, we decided to, keep our house but rent it out and move to where Mum and Dad were. So my husband could help with the garden. It was 2.5 acres. And I was on hand there to help Mum with Dad with the Alzheimer's. So I built another house on Mum and Dad's block of land. We moved into their old house, and I purpose-built the new house. Owner built it, which saved a lot of money, which was good. And I love doing it. So we have lived there for all this time, but now Mum's not there. We're like, well, do we stay here? Do we move? Do we not? Do we? And then I'm going through, we've got an 84 square metre shed. It's probably like 184 square metre shed, but, measurements, but it's high and full. And I'm going, we've got that much stuff, which is so to do with Dad's work with the testers. And so emotionally, for me, I'm struggling, really struggling. And that's really, other than when I've been sick, it's the only time I've really struggled with sugars.
And do you have coping strategies that you go to? Is it talking to people? Is it going for a walk? Although you've had an injury, so you can't probably do that.
Yeah, no, that's been hard.
What are some lifestyle things that you do to help cope with these mental challenges?
I've got good friends. My friends are, when I was sick, couldn't walk, couldn't get out of bed, couldn't put my leg down, couldn't do anything. That was chaos. But they'd come round. They'd bring me flowers. They'd come and have a chat. I'd cry with them. I'd laugh with them. And that was fabulous. And my baby daughter, nearly 26, baby daughter, sounds funny, but, she's been my backbone through a lot of stuff. And my husband, without Craig, I probably wouldn't imagine. And he's been through me with ups and downs.
Yeah.
And sadly enough, for years, I've had a feeling he had diabetes, but, because his dad had type 2. And, he's just been diagnosed.
Oh, really? Type 2?
Yeah, type 2. So,
really?
And in saying about the finger pricks, and you say, what did you say I've had? 10,000?
180,000?
180, yeah. And Craig will do his finger prick and he goes, oh. And I go, oh, you wimp. Get over it. And then he does it in the same spot on the same finger. He says, don't your fingers get sore? No.
Move it around.
Move it around.
Change the lancet to a sharp one. Don't use a blunt one.
Yeah. So.
Diabetes is a family condition, essentially. Like everyone in the family, if you're close with your family, are dealing with it alongside you.
Yeah.
So it helps so much to have a strong family network and friends and, as you say, people to talk to.
Oh, huge.
To think about what we have to do every day and for so long.
Yeah.
Decade after decade, it can take a toll. I actually think that for me, having these conversations is just kind of like therapeutic. I've spoken to so many people now on the show and heard so many stories, but with a common thread of like similarities between them all, and you realize we're all going through the same thing.
Yeah, that's it.
Sure, there's little differences here and there, but hearing other people talk about it makes you feel really good, and then you can share and vice versa. So,
and I was looking at something. It was on. I'm not big on Facebook. I will look at things, but I've got. I think it's a Diabetes Australia. Not Diabetes Australia. It's an Australian diabetes Facebook group thing.
Right.
And it shows you how technical I am, doesn't it? Anyway, and I read something yesterday and it was a lady saying that her daughter was diagnosed. She's had it for 2 or 3 weeks and she was crying because she said, I'm scared that she won't get friends and she won't do this and she won't be able to have babies and, she won't be able to study at uni and all this. And that's actually really sad that she does feel that way because diabetes, it doesn't stop you doing anything. It's you just got to learn to live with it.
Right.
And manage it and control it. And yes, you can have kids. I've just been presented with a baby grandson.
Oh, wow.
So,
Congrats.
So he's 3 months old.
Is that your first grandchild?
First grandchild.
Congratulations.
So, and Mum, sadly, Dad wasn't here to see him being born or be aware that he's here. But, so thankfully we've got 4 generations.
And no one has diabetes in the family?
No.
So, although
just me.
Right.
I'm the lucky one.
You're the lucky one. Although there's the genetic element,
yes,
a lot of people do fear that when they have a child that their children are going to get diabetes. But I don't know the stats off the top of my head, but I don't think the odds are as high as people think it is. People think it's like flip of a coin, is my baby going to get diabetes? It's not quite like that.
No.
There's genetic predisposition, there's environmental triggers, there's a lot of things that happen that cause diabetes. So I think that people who are worried about that probably talk to your doctor, find out the actual statistics around that because it's not so common.
Yeah.
What are some other stigmas you reckon we can smash that you've faced over the years? Are there any?
Okay. So the biggest thing that got me, my husband and I had some friends that were a couple and she was a nurse. Well, she still is, but we're not friends anymore because, she's moved to Queensland. They broke up, things like that. So we don't have contact with them now, but it's not because of what I'm going to tell you about. But she used to, they'd invite us around for dinner or they'd come to us and lunch, barbecue, whatever. And she used to say, oh, you're a diabetic, you can't eat that. Oh, felt like wringing her neck.
I know.
And it's like, well, hang on, I am the diabetic and I'll be the judge of that. Okay, my sugar level's this and yes, I can have a little bit of that. Thank you.
Right.
But she, well, I shouldn't put it on the table.
Right.
Oh, God.
So, I mean, let's unpack where that comes from, because I think people assume that it's the food you ate that caused your type 1 diabetes. Wrong.
Yeah.
So that's the first mistake.
Yeah.
The next thing that they say is, you can't eat that, but they can, right? Yeah. They think that they can eat it. So what I tend to do in those situations is just educate them around, anyone who has type 1 diabetes can really eat anything they want. It's a choice to be made.
Yeah.
We just have to manage the system that your system is doing automatically. We do it manually.
Yeah.
That's the only difference.
That's it.
And sure, we might eat things that are not that good for us, but it's part of that human experience. Like, we can make those decisions.
But
we can
it was
choose
the
that.
fact, I think, as a nurse, and, she was probably old hat nurse, which fair's fair. That's, our age, that's what you get.
Right.
But she wouldn't accept education on it.
Yeah.
And I mean, for me
From
to
you.
say, well, hang on a minute, I'm not saying education as in going and get professional help. But she just simply, no, you can't eat that. I go, well, hang on.
Let me decide.
I'll be the judge.
Any other stigmas that you've faced over the years that you think need to be squashed?
Kids at school. I actually had my locker super glued when I was in high school. Kids being kids, girls are worse than boys. They can be really, not nice. And it was based on, because I had to go out at 10 a.m. for my morning tea. And this was sort of as the glucose testers were starting and becoming, like 13 years of age. And kids can be really cruel. But, because I had to go out at a certain time and get my morning tea.
You were special.
I was special. I mean, my husband says I'm special, but
different kind of special. Yeah, they had some sort of jealousy or
yeah. And fair's fair, that's. But I think I also had a little boy in primary school, and he was a bit of a ratbag kid, he actually punched me in my arms where I had my needles. Ooh. He got the cane for that.
Wow.
So, yes, he never touched me again.
Yeah. Wow.
So kids at school, I think it's really important that probably more so the teachers and the staff have education on that.
Yeah. I think these days
they are doing it more and more.
I feel like the stigmas are evaporating pretty quickly, just based on the numbers of people who are living with diabetes and how accessible information is. We've got the internet, social media, podcast shows like this. Like, we're talking about diabetes a lot.
Yeah.
And, especially when World Diabetes Day comes around, like, my social media feed is just flooded with diabetes-specific content. And to me, it seems like the stigmas are falling away. The only ones that are left over that I experience are more just sort of ignorance and people who are uneducated in the space of diabetes, which is fine. Not everyone has to know everything about diabetes.
But unless you live with it.
Yes. You don't know anything. Yeah.
No. Right. I mean, when I met my husband a long time ago, he said to me, I never even knew it existed. Mm-hmm. So,
exactly.
that was...
So how are we supposed to know what causes it and what you can and can't eat? It's very tricky.
Yeah.
But as you say, your friend who was a nurse, you would expect.
I would hope that she'd be a little bit. Yeah. So, So that is something that I'll never forgive her for. But that's not, times and things just change. They've moved, like I said.
Yeah.
So, and I think the other thing too that I find I hear a lot of is that people think you've got something. I've got a headache. Oh, it's because you're a diabetic.
Mm.
Oh, I've got an infected finger. It's because you're a diabetic. You know,
you name it.
You name it. Yeah, you name it. Exactly. And they then think it's because you're a diabetic.
Interesting.
And the girl that I've met, that I've become good friends with, who had one of Dad's machines when she was a little girl, and the carer for Mum, she was the manager that came in and saw things on Mum's wall and started crying and said, "You Dad, he saved my life." Her and I, we talk to each other, and she says, "Oh, and this has happened." And I say, "Because you're a diabetic," and we crack
You
up.
laugh about it.
We laugh.
You've got to have some humour when you're living with diabetes.
But that's the thing. The sad thing is people. So, okay, if it's because you're a diabetic, why do other people go to the doctor?
Right. Why do other people get infections? Why do other people wear glasses for their eyes?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Of course. I mean, look, there are things that living with diabetes can increase the risk of developing other comorbidities and conditions, but it can't be blamed for everything.
No.
And I actually hate blaming my diabetes for anything.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I'll be in a situation where it could be really easy to blame it. You know, even just silly things like, "Oh, I was late. Sorry, I'd never do it." Like you can do it. Yeah. But I know that it's a slippery slope, and if I do,
I think
bad idea.
I do think a lot of people could also blame it because they think they can.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to offend anyone saying that, but I think a lot of people can use it as an excuse.
Right.
And I don't think you really should do that.
I don't think it's productive for the individual because there's nothing more empowering than taking responsibility.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying responsibility for getting it, but for how you manage it.
And in saying that, the management side of it with what Dad did, that's what revolutionised diabetes control altogether.
Yeah.
So management, if you don't, and I go around to all these education centres back in the day, and I'd talk and I'd show them the machines and new models, this, that and the other, and they'd ask me a lot of questions and they'd say, "How do you control it?" And I said, "I do a lot of testing, a lot of testing. I'll adjust carbohydrate intake. So, so if you don't want to do 1 million more needles a day," slight example, exaggeration, or adjust your insulin too much, base it with or use your carbohydrate intake.
So you can tweak your nutrition.
Yeah.
You can exercise and move in certain ways.
Yeah.
You can prioritise your sleep.
Yeah. Although I haven't been able to move much for the last 18 months with my leg.
What can you do at the moment with your...
I can't walk a lot.
Right.
Because then it starts to swell.
What's your relationship been like with exercise when you're healthy? Have you seen that when you exercise your blood glucose goes down or?
Well, yes, exercise. So I've got a treadmill at home and I can go on that for a little bit at a time. But because I haven't been able to do anything, like I literally could not put my leg down, I'm so out of condition. So the plan is now we've sorted Mum in her care place and, a few other things we need to sort, but I'm going to try to get back on that a little bit more per day, and then hopefully that will also help my leg.
Okay.
But a lot of it is confidence.
Yes.
I'm scared
it's
I'm going to
scary.
fall
There's
again.
trauma around the fall.
I am really scared.
Compound fracture is no joke.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I get it.
Yeah.
There's a whole psychological element to it all. Well, I know a good exercise physiologist if you need one who can help you with an upper body resistance training program in the meantime.
Yeah. Well, I got myself those, I think they're 1.5 kilo things from Kmart.
Right.
Perfect.
Exactly. Resistance bands. There's a lot of things.
Yeah.
I mean, even people who are listening at home and don't have that stuff, you could literally get a workout holding bottles of water and, there are ways to work up your upper body even from a chair.
Yeah.
You can sit down and do a workout. I remember when I was working in when I was getting my accreditation for my exercise physiology, I was working at an old age home, and my job was to host the morning workouts, and it was a seated workout. There was like 30 or 40 elderly patients, and they all had their dumbbells and resistance bands, and you'd be surprised how good a workout you can get sitting down with some resistance.
Yeah.
And I just remember seeing everyone at the end of it so happy that they did it. Like they were so looking forward to that session.
Yeah.
Because it was...
Because they feel good after.
Feel good, just mentally your mood is enhanced.
Yeah.
You feel a bit stronger.
Yeah,
you feel more confidence that if you need to get out from a chair, you can push off the chair. So yeah, there's a lot that you can do. Well, before we wrap up, let's talk about your book.
Yep.
The Sweetest of All Inventions.
Perfect name.
What a great name. So did you come up with...
Had to be that.
Yeah.
It was a team effort. So one of my dearest girlfriend, her friend, who I do know, she brought her over to our place one day and I said, I need a book name. And she said, call it Sugar Daddy. And I said, my dad would roll in his grave if I use that term, because my dad was a very proper man. He was a true gentleman. So I held that in the back of my head and then, just started writing things down. And then in that book, I've got a few people that have spoken about Dad's invention as people living with diabetes and, how it's affected their life. And this guy lives over in America and he said, he said something about the daughter of all inventions. So I got that and then I'm going, hang on, sugar, sweet. So came up with the sweetest of all inventions.
It's a great little play on words. I'm just flipping through it now and looking at some of these images. Unbelievable. It brings the story to life, like seeing the devices, the photos of your dad in his little workspace. Yeah. This is an amazing legacy project that you've put together. How long did it take you to write?
2 years.
2 years.
And look, to be honest, it's not the best written book. I am no author.
You officially are. Your name's on a book.
Yeah,
so.
I have done that. But there was a lot. And I tend to just write it as I think it. Mm-hmm. So God love my husband and Brendan, who was a diabetic guy that approached me through Diabetes Australia, and he helped with it as well. He was doing writing at uni, so I thought, perfect. So he has a mention in there also. And my thing was I just say it or type it as I was thinking it. So by the time I'd actually written the story, to go back through it was like, oh, my goodness, I can't possibly put that out. So Craig, my husband, who's good with words and things like that, we spent a lot of time going through it. And so without him, I couldn't have done that. And without Brendan, I couldn't have done it. But, yeah, so it's a story about growing up with diabetes, how it affected my life, and the story about the glucose testers. Mm. And Dad also has a chair at Sydney University, which was, it's big legacy for him. Mm.
Fantastic.
And that's looked after by Stephen Twigg, Professor Stephen Twigg. Yep. So, yeah, but Stephen Wright has written about Dad in the book and the Stanley Clark chair. Martin Schillink has also done that. Mm-hmm. Marg McGill. There's letters from diabetics that we've known for years through the testers and how it's affected their life.
Oh, that's awesome.
Things like that. So,
speaking of letters, it's time for the final segment of the show.
Okay, all right.
My favourite segment, the Dear Diabetes segment.
Now, I will say I did this late last night.
It's okay. I love the fact that you've written it on paper. It just shows me
Shows
that
you
you're sticking to your
how technical I am.
You're avoiding the tech, and that is perfectly fine. I love it. So, well, just before you get into your letter, where can people find the book?
It's available online if you just type in the sweetest of all inventions.
Okay.
It will come up. Probably the best place to get it is booksonlineaustralia.com.au.
Okay.
And you do need the .au.
All right.
And 10% of the profits go to Diabetes Australia and 10% to the Stan Clark Chair.
Oh, fantastic.
At Sydney Uni for the research. So
good on you.
Yeah. Dear Diabetes, you raised your ugly head when I was 5 years old. You brought turmoil and heartache to Mum and Dad, and you created stress and hard adjustments for a young family. Strangely enough, after many years of hospital admissions and inaccurate urine testing, you were a blessing in disguise, not only for my family, but for multi-millions of diabetics around the world. My dad, Stanley Clark, was an electronics engineer and had an immense amount of knowledge in not only electronics, but also in magnets and radar. Using his vast amount of knowledge, he created the world's first home blood glucose tester. His invention put blood glucose testing into the hands of the diabetic patient in not only their home environment, but also in camping by using mains power and battery. Stan Clark's invention became a worldwide phenomenon which revolutionised diabetes management. Dad was a humble man who initially made the very first home blood glucose tester to help me, his only child. Beautiful paper, it's all, Stan Clark's story is remarkable, and other than Banting and Best, the insulin inventors, my dad will be in the hearts and minds of every diabetes sufferer around the world. Thank you, diabetes. You gave me an illness that became the catalyst of diabetes management. May my dad's invention be remembered for many generations to come, a mark in diabetic history that should never be forgotten.
Very well said. Thank you so much for sharing that.
There's tears to my eyes.
Oh, it's great. Well, Stan Clark is a legend, and you should be very proud. I know you are. And
yeah, I am.
Thank you for sharing your story in the book and on the podcast.
Hopefully whoever does purchase the book, I thank you, because it is a story that I think you will want to pass down in your future generations as well.
Yeah.
Just a humble dad.
Yeah. A great Aussie success story.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sitting down with me today. I had a great time talking to you.
Me.
And I really look forward to hearing the feedback of what people think about this amazing story.
Yep. Thanks, Drew.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. There you have it. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. If you want to show Lisa and the Clark family some love, pick up a copy of her book, The Sweetest of All Inventions. As always, I'll see you in the next episode for another dose of inspiration and education.